Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Rare Breed Spin Along. And in this video we're going to be looking at the very interesting breed Boreray. If you're new here, my name is Becca and I'm a hand spinner, knitter and newbie weaver, and you're very welcome to my little fibre art space in my home in West Wales. If you're an old friend, welcome back. So in this video, we're going to just look at a little bit of the history of the breed, look at some of the characteristics of the fibre, and then I'm going to sit down at the wheel and just show you how I've spun it. It is the first time I've spun this breed, and yeah, it was very interesting, and I hope that if you are following along, that you found it very interesting as well. So the Boreray are what is known as an ancient sort of stroke feral breed. They're small, they're hardy, and ideally evolved to survive life on a harsh Scottish island. They come from the St Kilda's archipelago of islands in Scotland, and they were very much up until the 1970s basically on the brink of extinction. And then there's been some really dedicated breeders and crofters that have really supported the breed and sort of brought them back from the brink. You've probably heard me talk about the book The Lost Flock by Jane Cooper, and Jane is a hand spinner turned shepherd who moved with her husband up to Scotland to basically midlife kind of change everything and keep sheep, and the sheep that she chose was the Boreray. I mean, I won't go into great detail. It's a great book. I won't give you any spoilers, but it's non-fiction, but there's lots of history, relationship between the sheep and the land and the people, and yeah, I can highly recommend it. And I went to get it out from the library because I asked our local library to buy it, which they did, and I read it just before Christmas, and I went to get it out again and someone else was reading it, which I'm really pleased about because it's an excellent read. So I will leave the details of that book in the description below for you. Okay, so let's talk about some fibre facts. The breed has a short staple length, a spin count that we would class as coarse, and it comes in lots of beautiful colours. So this is what I bought. It's 100-gram carded batt. Now it's very interesting stuff, Boreray, because the sheep has effectively two coats. It has an undercoat and a top coat, and there's quite a lot of kemp. And if you are new to spinning, you've not heard about kemp, so that, oh, you're going to be able to see that kind of hairy bit there, that's what we call kemp. So it's a hair breed or a feral breed. So generally people say that the fibre is coarse. However, yes, if it's all kind of blended together like this, then yes, it probably would be classed as coarse. But because you've got those two distinct coats, it is possible, if you have a raw fleece, to separate them. Not something I have ever done, but as I've sort of been learning about this breed, so I've been interested in maybe getting a whole fleece and actually seeing if I can separate out the undercoat from the top coat. Now I'm just sort of pulling this apart, thinking, how am I going to spin this? Because I could put it on, I could make rolags, but I think I'm just gonna kind of pull off chunks and spin off the chunks, so sort of like that. It's a very nice honey colour. It's still got a lot of lanolin in it, and that's to do with the way it's been produced. I mean, it could have been scoured to within an inch of its life and then it wouldn't have any lanolin in it. I mean, it smells very sheepy, and there is a good amount of lanolin. I mean, I can see how much kemp there is in here. There's a bit of VM, vegetative material, but it's going to be very interesting to see how it spins up. Sorry, I've just realised I've been doing the fire, so my hands have got kind of soot from the fire on them. Right, so Interesting, interesting. I'm going to be very interested to spin this. I'm going to try and spin it long draw, not my default spin at all, but we'll see how we get on. If I get really stuck, then I might well just have to put it into Rolex and see if I can do it from there. Right, okay, I'm going to get the wheel out and have a little play. So I've got a little kind of staple length sample for you. Very short staple length compared to what we have been spinning recently. And it's a lovely colour, really lovely colour. So a couple of days ago, I got the wheel out. It is the first time I've spun this, and I decided I was going to spin it long draw or attempt long draw. This is absolutely not my default spin. However, I did used to spin it an awful lot when I was spinning my friend's Jacob fleeces that were hand prepared and were carded. So I have done it, but I just haven't done it for a while. And I will talk you through my thoughts on it and how I got on with it. As I'm not very practiced at long draw, I started with a short backward draw, just letting the twist run into my drafting triangle, but from quite a short sort of distance. And then as I was getting the feel for it, I was just going a little bit further back, a little bit further back. And the big difference between a woolen spun and a worsted spun is the amount of air that you're letting into the fibre. So you want to have lots of air with a woolen spun because it's going to be used for something that's going to be squishy and squashy, like a sort of fluffy hat or a nice big jumper. Having said that, I kind of really, as I was spinning this, felt that this was really so coarse that a jumper is not something I would want to actually make with this. I think if you had the very fine undercoat, it would be completely different. It is supposed to be as soft as cashmere, and that certainly is something I would like to investigate at some future date, is being able to spin just the undercoat. But because what I had was just all mixed in together, it was very coarse, there's a lot of kemp, and I sort of felt that this is something that maybe I would make a rug out of, or a blanket, something that was not going to be next to the skin. Although sometimes a jumper is not next to the skin, I think if it was kind of on your neck, a jumper around your neck or around your wrist, it would be really itchy, and I just don't think it's something that I would want to wear. It is an absolutely beautiful colour. It spun like an absolute dream. There was more lanolin in it than I normally like to spin with. I am not a fan of spinning in the grease, but actually I think that really helped in this case. I also, just halfway through, just switched a little bit and did a little bit of like a short forward draw, just to see if I could get a worsted spun yarn. And although it is not strictly speaking 100% worsted because of the preparation, because it's a carded preparation rather than a combed preparation, I really felt that I was going to be able to get quite a smooth yarn. And the rest of what I have left out of the 100 grams that I bought, I am going to spin in a worsted style of spinning, so that I've got a smoother yarn, because I think this is going to be an excellent warp thread for when I'm making blankets on the rigid head loom, which is something that is going to come onto the channel at some future date. So all in all, it was easy to spin. It was not a challenge to spin at all. I enjoyed it. It was very relaxing. But I think I would have to really say that it is not a fleece that you can just think is going to be suitable for everything, because it really isn't. It historically was used for making tweeds, and I completely understand that. The breed also sheds its fleece. Not all of them, but a lot of the sheep actually, they sort of, when it's time to shear, you don't actually have to shear them. You can rue them, which means that you can actually pluck last year's wool growth off them without having to actually physically cut it with shears. And there's a great explanation of this in Jane Cooper's book, talking about the way that it was historically done. So I'm spinning on the larger of my whirls, which means I'm going to have a fairly bulky sort of yarn, probably going to knit it up on 5mm because it's going to be roughly Aran weight, which is generally what I get when I spin on this larger whirl. And I am literally just going to knit you up a sample because, as I said, I'm going to use this for weaving. My key takeaway with this breed is the fact that if you can, try and get either a separated fleece, so you've got the undercoat and the top coat separated, or if you can buy a whole fleece, do that separation yourself, because the under fleece, the undercoat, is supposed to be as soft as cashmere, and when it's all mixed in with the top coat, it really isn't like that. It is definitely on the coarse side, and yeah, I would not want to wear it next to my skin. Absolutely not. So let's have a little look at the knitted sample. Okay, how well you're going to be able to see how hairy this is, I'm not sure. It knitted up really well. There's still a fair bit of lanolin in it, even though I did wash it with a bit of fairy liquid, I have to say. And yeah, I mean, interesting spin, very interesting. And I love this colour. It's such a beautiful colour. Really, really beautiful. And as you can see, it's got a nice bit of bounce in it. And despite the fact that I really don't spin long draw very often, and it was it was not the world's best demonstration of long draw. However, it's actually quite consistent. Long draw is generally harder to get a consistent yarn than working with a combed top or something and spinning a worsted style, but still pretty consistent. I'm perfectly happy with that. But as you well know, if you've been here for any length of time, I'm not that bothered about how consistent my yarn is really. If I am going to use it for warp yarns, warp threads, I am going to have it a little bit more consistent than that. But I'm sure I'm going to be able to achieve that quite easily just by spinning in a different style. So there you go. I'm pretty happy with it. Definitely going to experiment with it, but I definitely want to be able to have that really soft undercoat separated from this coarser stuff that's really hairy. So you may or may not have noticed that there are no mid-roll ads in these spin along videos. So what I'm going to do instead is do my own advert, and it is an advert for my newsletter. I write a weekly newsletter that comes out on a Tuesday, which is all about hand spinning, natural dyeing and the fibre arts. I do a little review of the takeaways from the video of the week before and just let you know what's coming up on the channel. So you can join that for free down in the description, and just make sure you check your junk mail, because if you're anything like me, then newsletters, sort of the first time I receive a newsletter, it does tend to go to my junk. So if you don't mind just checking your junk mail if you haven't received it kind of straight away. So I hope you enjoyed that video. I do have a hashtag that is running on Instagram. I am not a big Instagram user, but I did think it would be really nice to have a bit of interaction around this whole subject of spinning these rare breeds. So if you use the hashtag #RareBreedSpinAlong, if you want me to share your spins in my stories, then tag me in. You don't need to tag me in. This is really about just exploring these breeds and getting more people spinning them, because if we spin them, then we will save them. And there is also a hashtag for the American spinners among us that is shave them to save them. And I think that's the Heritage Breeds hashtag for spinning rare breeds. The next episode of the Rare Breed Spin Along will be in 2 weeks' time, and I will be looking at the Border Leicester. It's another breed I've not spun before. It's going to be quite different to this, I think, so I'm really looking forward to that. So until next time, may your needles be swift and your yarns be soft.